And furthermore, he tells us that the purpose of Maxwell's clinics in and around Johannesburg was black people with H.
He had the one in Tokoze, he had the one in Alex.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, there was on the West Strand. So, and these were research facilities for them to.
In the early 90s, HIV/AIDS was so widespread that almost everyone in South Africa knew of somebody who was infected or affected by it. What made the situation even worse was Thabo Mbeki's policy on the issue of ARV drugs. He instituted policies denying these drugs to AIDS patients. The Thabo Mbeki government even withdrew support from clinics that started using the AZT treatment that prevented mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Now these policies resulted in millions of people losing their lives that could have been saved. Now the question arises, why is it that a large number of people infected with this virus are concentrated in one part of the world even though it didn't originate here? Was it a coincidence or a man-made problem? Now in this video, we'll be looking at the conspiracy theory that the CIA and the British intelligence conspired with the South African Institute for Maritime Research to spread not only in South Africa, but also in all SADC regions.
This is about orphans. And my mother and father died. And I'm actually an orphan and I'm infected. But I'm a very lucky little boy. That I'm living with a foster family. But I'm strong and healthy. And that's what I just want all the other orphans to have.
South Africa has the highest number of people living with HIV in the world, with people living with the virus to date, or 18.8% of adults aged between 15 to 49 years. Now the notion that HIV is a man-made problem has been floating around for decades, and rumors have persisted that the deadly virus was created by the CIA to wipe out and African Americans. Even today, the conspiracy theory has a number of high-profile believers. Alexander Jones, who says he spent 30 years as an intelligence officer with SAIMR 30 years ago, was telling it all in a shocking confession made on camera in a documentary called Cold Case Hammarskjöld, which is done by a Danish and a Swedish filmmaker. According to this former member of South African apartheid-era intelligence service, he says that the and other diseases were deliberately spread among the population in an effort to kill off as many black people as possible. SAIMR was linked to the country's notorious chemical and biological warfare program headed by Dr. Wouter Basson, a program which apartheid racists used as a cover-up to kill black people in South Africa and beyond. Now the racist operational areas was what used to be called the frontline states, or what we know now as the SADC regions. South Africa's chemical and biological warfare program had links with Rhodesia's version of the same kind, and the pair did a lot to harm a lot of black Africans, including spread and other dangerous diseases in the regions, and topping it up with HIV's experimentations. And even worse, when independence was approaching in Zimbabwe, there are suggestions that Ian Smith's Rhodesian government, with support from the South African regime, rushed to remove evidence by killing a lot of black people who were subjects of the chemical and biological warfare experiments. Alexander Jones, who was telling it all on camera, that SAIMR used bogus to spread the virus in the SADC regions. Basically, these guys were going to villages and townships pretending to be doctors so they could give people virus, but in reality, they were spreading the virus with the help of these racist governments, allegedly.
And what kind of operations were you doing?
Well, it was clandestine operations. We were involved in coups, taking over countries for other leaders. We were involved in Mozambique, spreading the virus through medical conditions. We were involved in Angola with Dr. Jonas Savimbi for various operations. We gave military support.
You mentioned actively spreading AIDS?
There was a unit in from SAIMR that one of the things was that we went into African countries.
And how was that done exactly?
Through
vaccines?
Yeah, pretending to manipulate people and that type of thing.
The idea being to kill black people?
Yeah, to eradicate black people. You must understand the concept was that killer. It was incurable at that point in time, so it was led to believe that if you infected people, it was the quick, non-militaristic approach to eliminate black people.
These guys were working under the command of their leader, Keith Maxwell, who wanted a white majority country. In his words, I quote, "The excess of the 1960s, 70s and 80s have no place in post-AIDS South Africa." Basically, he wanted majority of black people. Now, according to Maxwell's plan, if it had worked, by the early 2000s, South Africa should have had a white majority population. Maxwell was a fake doctor. Publicly, he told people his mission is to help poor people and also finding the cure for HIV. That's why he was operating a lot of clinics in black neighborhoods, but in reality, he was the opposite. He was a racist, murderous psychopath. You see, Maxwell's wife described him as an emotionally abusive husband, and she wasn't sure why he even started SAIMR. She didn't know what he was getting up to. You see, this guy Maxwell, he did a lot of evil deeds in Africa under the racist regime.
We were at war. Black people in South Africa were the enemy.
But so it was about white supremacy?
Definitely. Definitely trying to retain the white supremacy on the African continent.
And furthermore, he tells us that the purpose of Maxwell's clinics in and around Johannesburg was to protect black people with HIV.
He had the one in Tokoza, he had the one in Alex.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, it was on the West Strand. So, and these were research facilities for them to inject people with a solution to see that they prevented AIDS in it. In the meantime, they were injecting people with AIDS.
And he was only working on black people in these clinics?
Yes.
For almost nothing?
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. So you know what I mean? What easier way to get a big guinea pig? That you live in the apartheid system. Black people have got no rights. They need medical treatment. There's a white philanthropist coming in and say, you know what, I'll open up these clinics and I will treat you. I will do this. And meantime, you actually the wolf in sheep's clothing.
These guys were involved in coups in Africa, taking over countries for other leaders, killing opposing leaders and anyone resisting the oppression of the powers that be. Now, SAIMR's leaders described themselves as anti-communist, but in reality, they were just a bunch of racists. They were trying to retain the white supremacy on the African continent. Now, Maxwell died in 2006 from a heart attack. And among other things, the most dramatic claim was that SAIMR was behind the mysterious 1961 plane crash that killed UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld and 15 others. Dag Hammarskjöld is a former UN Secretary General who died in a mysterious plane crash near Ndola in Zambia on his way to the Congo in 1961. His agenda was to protect African countries from the tentacles of colonialism. Now, his death came during the post-colonial race for resources in Africa by European countries. He was a champion of decolonization, and he made powerful enemies with his support for the newly independent states or countries here in Africa, and he was also in opposition to white minority rule in the continent.
Yourself the target of attacks from all those who find their plans thwarted.
He was killed because he was going to change the way that Africa dealt with the rest of the world financially. And he was a threat. And who's got the most to lose? Corporate business worldwide. People are greedy. People want what others have got, and they don't want to pay for it. That's why they come to Africa. Because Africa seems to be easy in third world. Anybody that resisted any white form of manipulation on the African continent, SAIMR was prepared to go and quell those for a price, at a cost. And that was one thing that Dag Hammarskjöld was totally against. And he wanted every country for the people of the country. And obviously when you've got investments, when there's minerals, gold, diamonds, oil and all of that stuff, and we all know which countries think, he was a threat.
We countered effectively efforts from all sides to make the Congo a happy hunting ground for national interests. To be a roadblock to such efforts.
Now, during the hearing of South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1998, letters with SAIMR's official letterhead were found suggesting that the CIA and British intelligence had agreed that Hammarskjöld should be killed, but the CIA and the British intelligence denied any involvement in this case. Now, Maxwell apparently also claimed that SAIMR had brought down the plane in a handwritten memoir about the group that ended up with the family of a SAIMR veteran. They had allegedly detonated a bomb in the aircraft carrying Hammarskjöld and 15 others. Now, Hammarskjöld, on his final flight, he was heading for a secret meeting to try and broker peace in the recently independent Congo. Now, the country was on the brink of collapse after its Katanga province, which is key to national wealth because it held a lot of countries' rich mineral deposits. That province declared independence, but in actual fact, Western mining interests were backing that movement and they were arming the rebels. One SAIMR recruit, Dag Hammarskjöld, was a young bright university student who, after graduating, was recruited early to join SAIMR. She was a marine biologist. Dagmar was murdered outside a home in Johannesburg in 1990 for fear she would expose SAIMR's dark deeds. Now, days before she was taken out, her brother says she was living in fear because she knew these people were out to get her. She couldn't really confess to her brother what they were doing because she knew they would kill him too. So she died before she could even expose what SAIMR was actually doing. Dag Hammarskjöld's mother, who also went to the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission several times, she asked for an investigation into her daughter's killing as part of a wider conspiracy, but was turned away. Now, these are some of the things which they were not willing to open up about because they knew the investigation would expose a lot of top officials who were violating human rights.
He knew about Dag Hammarskjöld and what she did.
She was recruited to do medical research in Maxwell's labs in Alexander. And then obviously she progressed and she became part of the inner circle for the operations, and she went to Mozambique to fulfill her obligations. And when it came, word got out that she was going to testify.
She was going to inform the authorities about SAIMR.
Correct, yes.
And the spread of it.
That's right. And I think it's well known in our circles that it was SAIMR themselves that took her out.
And after the death of Dagmar, Dagmar's mother continues to investigate the case. She wants to find out who killed her daughter. She tried to give witness about the event to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Okay.
They told her no, because it was too controversial.
Yeah.
The murders were never found. The case was not investigated.
And they would not listen to her. In fact, I think the second or third time that she went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they escorted her out. Just the mention of the South African Maritime Institute made people nervous.
You know, even if it's war, there are certain acts you can't commit according to the rules of war. And you can be prosecuted even after the war is done, like they did to some African dictators. And I think this one qualified to be one of those. Now, the documentary called Case Hammarskjöld originally was investigating the case of Dag Hammarskjöld, but they just stumbled upon this information about the HIV/AIDS problem in the southern part of Africa. And Alexander Jones fled South Africa before the documentary was released.